Master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking. We're your hosts, Taylor and Austin, and today we have an awesome episode in store for you guys. We have brought back a guest from Season 1, and that guest is Rich Mulholland. Now, we had Rich come on Season 1 to talk about the missing link in all of our presentations. And if you haven't listened to that episode yet, you totally should. It's one of our highest rated ever on Technically Speaking. Now, we wanted to bring Rich back for round 2 because he just released his new book, Here Be Dragons. And we love this title mainly because we have a core value here at Speaker Flow of slaying dragons. But nonetheless, this book is a game changer in how you can position yourself to your audience, not the people you speak in front of, but the people who buy from you, so that you can start telling their story and start converting more sales. Often when people start working with us here at Speaker Flow, they want to sell more or market better, get in front of more people, grow their business. But you see, there's no CRM, there's no presentation good enough that's going to solve a bad story. And how you approach attracting and converting and guiding your prospect through the ways that you can help them. If you focus too much on yourself and your own story, ultimately they're not going to buy from you. And Rich's whole premise about Here Be Dragons is how to solve that problem. So join us today as we talk about sales, as we talk about telling the story of our audiences. And as always, stick around until the end for some awesome resources, and we hope you like this one. All right, Rich, man, welcome back to the show. It is, wow, round 2 appearance.
I'm so stoked that I got a call back. It's always a good sign. Like if nobody ever wants to bring you back again, you know they were lying when they told you, "Oh, this was great. Thank you so much."
Yeah, that's probably true. Well, it's an honor to have you. I think you're our first ever guest that we brought in twice either. So you've just helped us hit a milestone here with Technically Speaking, man. Thank you for that.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
For those of you not on video right now, you just missed a glorious shot of Rich. So make sure you check that out on YouTube. Shameless plug.
I mean, all the shots are glorious.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, Rich. Yes, of course.
And listen, I cannot compete with these two gentlemen and their wonderful beards. I have all kinds of beard envy when I'm on the call. I've got this like half gray little, I look like I'm something out of a Charles Dickens thing.
Charles, like Scrooge vibe? Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, the Scrooge vibe.
Oh, jeez,
that's so funny.
But more like McDuck.
I just got to throw out there too, this again for listeners, go watch the video. But Rich, you've got like the coolest studio setup I think I've ever seen in my life. Like complete with awesome lighting and this like light dark kind of dichotomy happening and a fog machine. Like it's so cool, man. My gray background over here is crying just seeing what you pulled together over there.
You know what it was? Is first of all, a throwback to my career because I was a lighting designer in my past life, but also realizing that I wanted to have a busy and a plain space for directing human attention. And then also I just wanted to have some place I wanted to come to work every day. My favorite picture didn't go on that wall. It's on that wall here. And I'm going to send you guys a photo afterwards. And I thought, I know it's going to be wasted, but I want to look at it every day. I don't want you to see it. So actually my favorite piece in the entire studio is sitting in front of me just to remind me, and it's badass. I will definitely send you a picture. I want to see what you think.
Nice. Heck yeah, I can't wait to see it. So, Rich, we are here to talk about Here Be Dragons, the latest release from your glorious mind, the book. So how did Here Be Dragons come about? Like, tell us that story. And I know you're all about presentations and story selling. So how did this whole idea of Here Be Dragons come about?
Okay, so actually, I'm gonna tell you the kind of business end story, and it's not the glorious, beautiful story that I would normally tell, but let's go back to the true origin of it. I was invited to speak at a conference called Think Sales. 5,000 people, like a huge big conference. It was 5,000 people over the days. Huge big conference, and all sales managers and sales directors of really big businesses. And their only shtick is that they never get speakers for free. All speakers are fully paid. And if they're going to pay you, you've got to present something you haven't presented before. It's actually a great model. They're like, no, we're not going to negotiate. Give us your fee. We'll pay your fee, but just bring something original. So I'm thinking, well, I've got to write content for sales professionals. And I had all these ideas in my head. The problem is I had this like 30-minute time slot. So I was stressing. I thought, how do I get everything out there? So what I decided to do, and also how do I get them to connect with me afterwards? Because of course the job of your work actually starts when you get off the stage. And so what I did is I wrote over the weekend before the talk, this little ebook came in at like 25 pages. And that was a book that was originally called Good Story, Bro. And we later called it Story Setter because we thought it was easier for people to understand. And so I did an entire talk and I said, I have these ideas I've done, but what I've done is I've written a book to accompany this talk that you can take these ideas and share it with your teams. And so that's where the whole thing started. As a complete, like we didn't actually realize how good it would get. This story seller workshopping with businesses has become one of our best selling products in the business. Wow. So people say you can't make money writing a book. You absolutely can make money writing a book, just probably not from the book.
From the book.
Yeah. And so the managing director of my business, Sam, she came to me and said, this book, when we get people to download it, works really, really well, but not enough people want an ebook. Now we've been working on it for longer, don't you think you can turn this into something real? So I contacted my publisher and I said, here's my idea. I've taken this, she'd already read it. And I said, I think we got a whole book in here. Can we do it? And then she said, yes, no problem at all. But the caveat is that I want to get it out for the December run, which will be big, which means you have to get me the finished manuscript in 2.5 weeks. Ooh. And that was it.
Yeah. Wow. Some late nights ahead of you after that?
Yeah, totally. Because I still had my work days, but it was amazing because I went into rapid... I just sat there and I worked out the chapters I wanted, what I wanted to cover. And because I had been speaking about it so much already and using it in workshops and things, you guys know what it's like. You have these idea traps where you're like, one day I'll get to this. And so you have all of these like random ideas just stored for if ever you want to work more on this. And so I just put them out into these chapters. And then I just went into hard research. I think all speakers are in one of two categories. They're either in the Olympiad category or they're in the journalist category. If they're in the Olympiad, they rely on their history and their experience. And if they're in the journalist, they rely on their research. And I knew in this space that I was a journalist. So I just went researching hard, which was amazing. And you know what it's like when the more you read, the more you're like, oh my goodness. And then you want to write more and you want to write more. And I thought it would be about like 4 times the length and it ended up coming in at about 8 times the length. On the last weekend, I was supposed to have it in on the Friday. And I said, I know you're not doing anything. Give me to Monday. And then I had 2 full days that I could just pump out. And I think the total writing time in Noveler was like 32 or 34 hours or something. And it was the best fun that I'd had. Like my brain was exploding. I was on fire. Yeah, I absolutely loved this.
Wow, man. What a feat. 2.5 weeks to produce. Okay. The book content is already amazing. So the fact that I just learned that took, 2.5 weeks, incredible. So like, why write this book now? I mean, obviously you've been around for a while. Like what, aside from Sam coming to you and saying like, hey, we should do this. Like what in you said like, yes, absolutely. I mean, aside from it, like performing well, why do you feel, I guess the more specific question here is why do you think that first ebook performed so well? And then, was that the only decision that led you to write the book now?
You know Julian Shapiro at all? At Julian or Julian.com.
Oh.
Phenomenal thinker, like so worthwhile checking out. He talks about when he writes, he says that your books, your ideas of anything you write. I only saw this last week, by the way, in a video I was watching actually 3 days ago. And he says you want to do something that's counterintuitive or counter-narrative. So either take something that like doesn't seem obvious and you're thinking, okay. Wow, okay, you present that to me, that makes sense. Like, that's interesting. Or do something that's counter-narrative. Like, we've been told something makes sense, but now we're saying it doesn't. And in the world of people getting my biggest frustration, and I worry that I might be calling you guys out here, because I'm sure you do it, but there's this overvaluing of storytelling. Guys, you just got to, how do you be a good speaker? Tell a good story. Oh, thanks, Captain Obvious. But like Stephen King, how'd you write a book? Tell a good story. I mean, that's not easy. And also when it comes to sales, and everyone says, you want to do a sales presentation, just tell a story. So people stand up and they tell their own story. So the kind of counterintuitive and counter narrative to a degree point is nobody cares about your story. So my old business partner wrote the foreword, and in the foreword he wrote a line that I love. And you know what? You know what I hate is I think it's the best line in the whole book, and I didn't write it. And the line is this: he says, "There are two stories in sales: yours and those that matter." And that line sums up the entire premise that yes, you have a story, but nobody cares. Our job isn't to tell our story. It is to sell other people a new version of their own story in which we play a part. And your job is never to become the hero of their story, is to audition for better and better parts. And as soon as like that idea in my head is so like, I just wanted to push and push and push. And I know guys like when I started working on it, there's guys like Donald Miller, who've obviously created Story Brand and done some amazing work in that regard. But when I went on to Story Brand, it's all very, very much about what you say on your website and how to present yourself and how to write your overarching narrative. And while I think there's certainly parallels between the two, all I care about is my world is presentation. And all I cared about was how can this impact the speakers we work with and how can this impact the customers we work with. And so I wanted to write the presentation version of that and then get it down into sales as well.
Yeah, okay, very cool. I'm also like just hearing you say this, and I can already hear like the pushback in the back of my head of lots of people out there that would feel I don't know, maybe hurt. Yeah, triggered. There you go. The idea that it's not about them. And like, I think that intuitively we all know that like we're here to serve, like we have to do the right thing for the people that we're standing in front of. But people feel very connected to their own journeys and their stories. And I imagine there's a lot of people listening to this going, oh man, like most of what I do and talk about is about me. So just tell me about like the pushback that you've heard, like, and how do you respond to that?
Well, generally speaking, I mean, so bear in mind, you are the hero of your story. The entire premise is built on the fact that you are the hero of your story. The aha moment for me, I was reading a book called I Am Keats by Tom Esseker. And in the book, he talks about the fact that everybody is living their own movie. And we look around and we look at everybody as if they're extras in our film. And then we forget that they're the stars of their own. And when he said this to me, it was like this huge aha moment. And there was a specific moment where it all came into like high def for me. Is I was walking in Cape Town airport. There's a long passageway where you go from baggage to you go out, like any airport, you go out where the cars pick you up. And on the way, there are these booths of people with taxis. And they all stand there with their sign and they say to you, taxi, would you like a taxi service? Would you like a taxi service? And they're just kind of interrupting you walking. But what would happen is, so what everybody just does is they just pretend they don't exist. And they would just walk past them and ignore them completely. I mean, chances are you've probably done something like that to those people, like just interrupting your day, taxi service, and at best you might give them a like this, as if you're like the CEO of a global corporation, and how dare they interrupt, that 1 second of thinking. So this particular day, I've just been listening to this book on the plane. I'm coming down, and this guy turns around and says to me, "Taxi service," and I was like, halfway through just dismissing and flat out ignoring, and I thought, oh crap. This is this guy's film. Like in this dude's movie, he is the hero of the movie. And every single extra ignores him for his entire existence. And I was like, oh, what a shit thing. And I turned around and said, hey, man, no, thank you so much. I'm all sorted. Thank you so much. And I walked away. And you could see, like, he didn't even know what to do with it. Like, I was going, hey, back off, freak. What are you doing? Don't be polite. You're not supposed to be polite. Bloody wanker. So, and then I started thinking about this thing. And so that's the realization, is that everybody is running their own film. And then every single person you speak to, what's important to them is how the next scene in their film looks, or the following on scenes. And so if you realize that, you understand that all human motivation is people writing better versions of their own film. So by all means, you can get onto stage and tell them your movie. But actually, unless that movie is in deep service of them writing the next scene of their own, they're not going to take an action because of it. So they may leave inspired, they may leave motivated, but these are generally relatively empty ideas. They're like, they have all the nutritional value of a spoonful of sugar. Give you a little bit of a high and you move away. So if you're, for example, a motivational speaker and you just want to motivate people and that's your job, then, and make them feel good, then, that has purpose. You can come out and you can do it. And again, if you're an Olympiad and you've, climbed Kilimanjaro 6 times backwards, then great story. But for the most part, most people, they don't want that. They just want to understand how to write the next scene in their own.
Wow. So how did you land on then the themes like dragons, weapons, treasure? Where did this whole idea of this dragon theme come from?
Well, first of all, because dragons are
aside from being awesome, right?
Like,
yeah, right.
For sure. The only time when dragons are always cool, except when they're on like the black T-shirt of like a 47-year-old white guy.
Yeah,
at that point, dragons cease to be cool.
Yeah, right? That's right.
And I am, by the way, a 47-year-old white guy.
On the fingers.
Yeah, exactly. Bright colors, metal. But basically, so the other thing is that like a big part of my history. So I'm a huge board gamer, and a huge part of my entry into board games is youth of playing Dungeons and Dragons my whole life. Now, I know this is probably the geekiest thing I've ever said out in public, but one of my fondest memories, literally, of my youth was the day we defeated our first blue dragon. It was like an incredible thing. Like for me, you don't meet dragons and Dungeons and Dragons very often. And this was like a high point of my role-playing career. And just dragons are cool. However, I think originally in the first iteration, I can't remember, I think I used the term villain. And you got to know your villain, and there was some alliteration that I wanted to use around that. The problem is, it didn't serve if I used the word villain, I needed an extra cast member. Because villains or nemesis or bad guys, they're generally only important that we beat them, and then we can go back to life as normal. But most people don't want to go back to life as normal. What they want is to overcome something and then land up in a better place. And what I like about the dragon trope, if you think about it, is if you picture a dragon and you picture a picture of a dragon, behind them is a cave full of gold and treasure and things like this. And I like the fact that the dragon represents both the opportunity and the threat. So the opportunity that exists if we overcome them. So either I can sell you that there is a threat to your business and we can help you defeat it, in which case the dragon is relevant, or I can say to you, your business deserves X. The problem is standing between you and X is this, and we can help you get past that. And so that was a important. Once I realized that, I thought, okay, that's very cool. And then I also love that phrase, and I guess it's the title of the book, "Here Be Dragons." It's from the old maps of old, Hic Sant Dracones. On the old maps, everybody knew dragons existed, and the old explorers, they would go out and they would look at their maps and they would look at where they wanted to go. And if they weren't sure what was out there, they would draw a dragon or a sea serpent. And the reason was, we know dragons exist, but we've not found them yet. Therefore, they must be in the lands we've not yet explored. And if we can get and find those dragons, then we will achieve glory and, go down in history. And so the explorers would set out essentially to find the dragons, the Hic Sant Dracones. And I thought that's so cool. And it was actually Danny, one of my team at Missing Link, who turned around when I originally had the book called Storyteller. And she was like, Storyteller is what it is, but the book should be called Here Be Dragons. And I was like, yes!
Yes.
It should be.
Yeah, it's a perfect name. It's like, for those of you who don't know listening, slay dragons is like our fourth core value here. And largely for that whole reason, there's a treasure beyond it. We can improve our life after slaying that dragon, basically. So we totally resonate with that.
Amazing. Yeah. Love it. Love it. That is such a cool story.
So who do you feel like this is like best geared for? Like who's the perfect reader for your new book?
It frustrates me saying so. I probably have two core heroes that I would like. Entrepreneurs, generally, and that's actually not true, right? So it's tricky. It's a book on sales, and a lot of the concepts in the book discuss sales things, how to run a better sales meeting, how to use tools of persuasion and eloquence to get people to think about something differently and to make a decision go your way. I think you have to understand that when I say this is a sales book, that might seem like it's not a book for you until you accept that we're all in sales. We're selling ourselves on the next job. We're selling ourselves on a promotion. Like sales is just such an inherently human quality. It's getting an idea across to other people and getting your way. It's actually persuasion. And it's a book on that. Now, I think most directly, practically, this is a book for sales professionals, and it will, I really believe, level them up. The next place that I think is fantastic is for change management professionals. To me, one of the biggest sales jobs in the world is change management. And I always see companies. In fact, a company came to us today and they said, we want your help working on the presentation of some values. We're amalgamating 5 businesses. And I thought, if you amalgamate 5 businesses and you tell them what their values are, then no one's going to believe you, because how do you know? But if you can get all of these people together and then you can present them, let me tell you where we came from. This is the world that's out there. And this is how hard the world is to defeat. Because we needed to have these 5 different rings. And if we could bring these rings together, then we are able to go. And I believe that that's what we managed to do by bringing you 5 together. This is the purpose we're out there to get, the victory condition that we need. And I believe that not a single one of us is able to do it together. By selling them a new story, as soon as people agree, then they're like, holy crap, you're right. Because people don't mind change, right? They just don't like being changed. So I think that's another big archetype. But I really do want... I just want like regular folk to read it. Like, I think it's a helpful book that will change the way you think about persuading other people. That's why we moved away from the highly practical book title of Story Seller, because I think even though it'll get picked up more by sales professionals, I think the Here Be Dragons may get picked up a bit more by regular people, and I think it will probably have a more profound impact on them.
Yeah, definitely.
Man, I know if I was just like walking by that book in the store, I would pick it up just because it's a really cool freaking name. So if nothing else, you got that.
Let alone the cover.
You.
I mean, look at that.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
dollar bills with the dragon. Oh man, Rich.
Killed it. I've got an old staff member used to work for us for years, and he'd worked on some of the other stuff for me before. And I messaged him, I was like, Jezza, I need you to draw this for me, bro. And I sent him, I said, I have this idea of an origami dragon made from dollar bills. And he was like, I'm on it. And I showed him this one image, and what he came back with was so much better. And he had it in the night. I never had a knight involved in there at all. And he was like, no, but like, we got to have somebody slaying the dragon. And he put it in. I was like, yes.
Love how stuff comes together like that. Yeah, that's right. So, Rich, what are some of the key takeaways that you want people to get from the book? Obviously, it's an amazing set of content, but like, what would you say are the key points that you want people to take away from it?
I think a lot of this is going to change. Okay, so obviously the first thing I want you to do is to understand where you fit in the cast of persuasion. The most important thing is understand where you sit and understand where they sit, and start thinking more about people's motivations. The next thing is to work out, very importantly, like, are you speaking to the right person? Are you, and you know this, you got to figure out what they care about. There are many small little subtle concepts, though, that I like throughout the book. Like, I talk about the idea of anchoring, and I talk about the idea of presupposition and changing the language we use to be more persuasive and more confident. I talk a lot about the idea of pricing, like how to understand your pricing value and what pricing can do, and how story can dramatically increase your prices when you attach narrative to something, how we can use to do that. And probably one of my favorite concepts as well, that actually was in my previous book, Boredom Slayer, but it was just too perfect for this not to get a mention. And I can't remember if I've spoken to you about this before, but it's the theory of the peanut butter and the pill. Have I ever chatted to you guys about this?
Yeah, nope, that's fresh.
All right, so my basic theory was, when people think about stories, they think about telling a story, they think that the story is the job, but it's not really. And I want to explain this to you. Do either of you have dogs?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I used to have a dog, a boxer. His name was Murphy. He was like badass, so well trained. He I did agility work with him. I did man work training. We did tracking. This dog was really like the most obedient dog that anybody in my family had ever seen. But the one thing I couldn't get him to do is, if he was feeling sick, I couldn't get him to take a pill. Like, that dog would only take food from me, and he would, like, if I gave him food, he would wait, and then I'd say you could take it, he would take it. But if I tried to give him a pill, he would just be like, bro, no way. Absolutely not. This is bullshit. So of course we've figured this all out, right? And so we figured out that what you do is you give the dog a little bit of peanut butter. I don't know if it's the same thing you do in the US, but like in South Africa, we give him a little bit of peanut butter, get a taste for it, then I take another blob, I put the pill inside it, and I put it on the ground, and I say, Murphy, stay. And he looks at me like, what? And I stay. And he's doing that bum shake thing, like, stay. And then all of a sudden he said, Murphy, take it. And this dog would just go forward, consume it. And you can see it was all like this. And then he would look at me like, I know what you did.
I know what you did. Yeah.
I know what you did. And I'm pissed. But by then the pill is done. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story is because to me, this is how we have to think about storytelling in business. Is that it was never about the story. The story is just the peanut butter, right? The story is in service of the pill. Its only reason for being is smuggling that pill into their brain. Now, if you say, well, then let's just give them the pill, that's what most people do with shitty slide decks with too much information. They show up and they throw up and they just force feeding facts and information into people's brains. And it doesn't stick. People fight it off. But if you can smuggle it in like the horse of Troy, then you win. So too much pill and it's too bitter for them to swallow. Too much story, they'll swallow the story, but they'll forget the pill and it won't have the effect. The job was not to make the dog have nice taste. It was to make the dog better. And I think that's one of the fundamental ideas of storytelling in business context is that what are we smuggling in? And most people haven't thought through that. They want to tell a story on a stage because they love the story, but they've not figured out what they're trying to leave behind when the story is gone. And of course, the best thing about stories in that context, when done well, is every single time somebody remembers the story, the pill gets smuggled in as well. So it kind of can work on repeat. That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I love that analogy. That's going to stick with me. Like peanut butter. Haha. Just kidding. Anyways. Yeah, like I think that what I love about storytelling too is not only is it just this vehicle that's going to teach a lesson more or less, but it also has this way of contextualizing the information that we're receiving so that like it's easier for us to make use of the information, right? Because the problem with just straight up facts and figures is that they're kind of dry and like you almost have to memorize them and then make use of that information yourself, figure out where it's applicable in your life. But if a story is built around it, that already gives you sort of a framework that you can see how it's applicable in the real world. And then it makes it easier for you to go and implement it yourself. So outside of it, even just tasting better, quote unquote, but it's also just, it helps lock the lesson in, I think, over time. And I think maybe you were just alluding to that, but I think that's a really important thing that you covered there.
No, I think you raise a great point. And I also think it makes it easier for you to tell it on. You know, that guy, I think his name is Brant Pivich or whatever. He wrote the 3-minute rule. And he one of my favorite insights on his theory was, it's not what you pitch to them that matters. It's what they pitch to the person they tell afterwards. Right? So if I go and do an hour-long presentation to a big bank, and all the head of procurement is in there and everything, and they've got to go afterwards to the CEO. They're going to walk out and they're going to take one bit of that, the bit that's easy for them to remember, and they're going to communicate that on. That's where we can use story and smuggle it in. The most important thing for me, though, is the story I'm trying to smuggle into them. What's helpful? What's not helpful if they turn around and say, this is a presentation company from Missing Link. They've been around for 25 years. They, focus on this. Remembering that is uninteresting. But if they say, this company presented an interesting take on what we thought our challenge was. We told everybody else the challenge was X, but they've actually told us that the challenge is this. And in fact, they told me a great story about why they think that's true. Do you know that according to this, and this happens? And then the CEO says, holy shit, that makes sense. And they say, right. And so that's what they then propose to do step 1, 2, and 3. So when they're presenting forward, they're never telling your story. They're always telling the version of their story that they think will make sense. And then the one last concept that we can maybe come back to later, if we remember, is the concept of the elephant and the robot from it's called not the Paradox of Happiness, the Happiness Hypothesis. Probably one of the greatest books I've ever read. And that I've kind of taken that concept quite a bit throughout the book as well.
Wow.
Can we just go there? I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, we can't end the episode on elephant and robot.
So there's a guy called Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book. It's H-A-I-G-H-T, pronounced Haidt. And he wrote a book years ago called The Happiness Hypothesis. Honestly, it will blow your mind. Like, I can't wait for you guys to check it out. And then like, you're going to send me a mail and you'll be like, dude, this is the most underrated. Like, why are people not talking about this book? And what he did was, in this book, he says that his greatest work is basically summed up in 2 sentences. And he said that all forms of decision-making is basically we think about when we make a decision as a rider on the back of an elephant. And the idea is that the rider is logical and the elephant is emotional. And your logical brain can want you to do whatever it wants to do, but if your emotional brain says, nah, We're not doing that. That's what you're doing. And if you make, so for example, if your logical brain says, I shouldn't spend $950 on a Grimsmo Norseman knife, I'm not saying that we made that mistake in our house. If I'm saying that I'm not going to spend that much money on a pocket knife, but then I end up buying it, then my writer becomes a lawyer and finds out all the reasons to justify that that was a really great decision. And I've now worked out how I'm going to use this knife in keynotes and in talks to communicate ideas of craftsmanship and stuff. So when I told my wife, she was like, oh, so it's a work prop. I was like, yeah, totally. That's exactly what it is. But when I presented the story, my problem with it is I keep on thinking of myself as the writer, because the writer is inherently human. I keep on separating the fact that I am on the back of an elephant, when in fact you are both. You are the crazy elephant and you are the rider. And I thought it was much more helpful when I changed the image. And the image that I now go with in my head, and I find that now I get it so much, it just landed for me, is C-3PO on the back of Dumbo. Right? Logical C-3PO, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, all the rules, and then Dumbo flying around. And just being like, yeah, whatever, man, but we're going here. And once that landed, and so I spent quite a bit of time talking about how do we motivate when do we motivate the rider, and when do we motivate, or the robot, and when do we motivate the elephant? And the truth of the matter is, the biggest realization with the more research I did going through the book was you always motivate the elephant. You motivate the elephant makes a decision, and then the robot becomes the lawyer. That's how people make decisions. I want to work with these guys because I think they're cool. I'll find the justification in order to explain my decision to somebody else so I feel good about it. And as soon as I settled on that, it became a very recurring theme throughout. And it made me realize that our story should be in service of the elephant.
Wow. Mm-hmm. What a gem. I love that train of thought, largely because I feel like that story tells like that. I don't know about you, but that tension that you have almost with yourself, right? Of like you wanting to go do something, but you have needing logical reason to go and do it. And it kind of puts labels to things that I think historically have been a little abstract. There's one thing though that I've got to ask before we wrap this episode up that I feel like some of our listeners might be asking themselves. And I think like when we have an episode like this, like all of these ideas are amazing and we want to say yes, like how do we get this thing into our business? And I know it's probably a whole other like episode that we can touch on, but if you had some quick tips for somebody who wanted to improve their story, where would they start with the business they have currently? How would somebody try and take, let's call it a DIY approach to improving the story in their business, whether they're selling, whether they're presenting? How do they start that process of refining it?
I think marketers for years have spoken about a concept called a USP, a unique selling proposition. And a unique selling proposition is what makes us special. And if you think about it, that's straight storytelling, right? It's just, this is me and this is why I'm special. I think we need to change that acronym a little bit. And I think this is instantly practical. And you can take away tomorrow. If there was only one thing I would start with, it would be this. You want to ask yourself, what is your UPS? Okay, now let's try experiment this with you guys. I want to know what your UPS is. Now, your UPS, think about everybody else that does what we do in the industry and versus you guys. Mm-hmm. Your UPS is the unique problem that only you can solve. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what is a problem that you are uniquely placed to solve in the world? There could be other things you're better at. Like you're brilliant at this, but the one problem that we can solve is this, that other people can't solve. Can you give me a thought? Like what do you think that would be for you? And there's no rehearsal here, so we're straight on the spot.
Austin, you want to deliver that, or do you want me to deliver that?
I think it's on you, CEO.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So the unique problem that we solve at Speaker Flow is being able to bridge the gap between the business strategies that we know work and how to actually bring those into the real world with repeatable systems that constantly produce success.
Okay. So what is everybody else saying? What is everybody else in your space saying to let's say speakers that want to work with them?
Yeah, generally it's just a bunch of strategy. So it's like that typical kind of business coaching. They'll get an idea like, so if you want to like refine your message, let's go do competitive research and then build up a list of your differentiators and then put together this little value proposition. Let's just call that a little exercise. But they don't give them the practicality of putting that into the real world and then testing that against, let's say, their sales process or reaching out to like past clients, let's say. There's no structure to that strategy of how to go and deploy it right now. It's just, here's an idea, go and think on it.
Okay. So what I'm hearing here is that, and the first thing we want to do is we want to turn every conversation into a 2-horse race, right? We don't want to be in a 5-horse race. We want to be in a 2-horse race. You versus the best of the other 4. So if everybody else is out there selling strategy, this is their USP. We will help you with your business strategy. We'll help you with your strategy, your talk strategy, create a nice talk that does this, help you figure out these things. You want to say to them, guys, here's the problem though. That is like having beautiful fall leaves lying on the forest floor. You're one of them, but nobody can find you, right? The job is not about being the beautiful leaf. It's about being the one that gets taken home and gets picked up, right? That is our job. And I believe that the biggest failing that speakers have is not that they're not brilliant speakers with great ideas and great messaging. You actually don't need us for that if you think about it. Yes, we can help you. But generally speaking, that's the bit you can figure out. The problem you have is that you're the worst kept secret. The problem you face is that you have all of these tools, but nobody can get out there. The dragon is that you are the worst kept secret. The dragon is that nobody understands that they need what is inside your head, inside their business. That's the only thing we can. We are obsessed about trying to figure out how can we help you bridge that gap? How can we get you in front of them? We believe that the answer to that problem, the weapon that we put out there, is technology. It turns out people have over-intellectualized the role of speakers, and they've underutilized technology, over-intellectualized the role of speaking in your talk and your things like this. They've underutilized the role of simple technology in getting you in front of the right people quickly. We want to help you with the one, but we want to give you the other. So, and again, like we're shitting the shit here, but that's the messaging. That's how I would frame it. By starting off with a unique problem. So the way we always say to people, when speakers say to me, like, but I want to build my personal brand, I always say to them, no, you don't, because nobody else cares about your brand. What you want to do is build the brand of the dragon that you can slay. Go to war with something. Be counterintuitive. What can you go to war with? Pick an enemy, have a nemesis, right? Go to war with that dragon. If people start agreeing with you on social media, you're absolutely right. We are thinking of story the wrong way. You're absolutely right. Death by PowerPoint is a cop-out. Blaming PowerPoint for a bad presentation is like blaming a pan for a bad meal. Like, we can be better at this. Once they start agreeing with the dragon, and then once they start seeing the treasure behind it, then your brand gets raised by default because you're the only person standing with the +6 weapon of that particular dragon slaying. So I want everybody right now just to sit down on a piece of paper and to go through and say, what is table stakes in our industry? What does everybody do? Tick, 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 tick. And are not the solutions they provide, the problems they solve for speakers. Some of them you might find you don't do, but you might be able to just discount this. And then to turn around and look and say, well, what problem do we uniquely solve? Even if it's not the most important one, even if it's just that one little feature, right? Let's say this: I do jiu-jitsu, and there's many jiu-jitsu academies, and they all teach variations of the same jiu-jitsu, and they're all like Gracie based and things like this, right? The difference between the one little jiu-jitsu school I go to is that it's connected to 70 other jiu-jitsu schools around the world, and I can train for free when I travel in any one of them.
Wow.
Whether I'm ever going to use it or not, and in fact, I just came back from a speaking tour of the US, and I didn't. Even though the idea that you should never miss out on your training, that you should be able to train in a system that exists anywhere in the world, wherever you are, that was enough for me to think this is the smart school to go to. I am assuming that because it's run by, Gracies themselves and all of these things, that all the other boxes are checked. So what is that unique problem that you can solve in your business? And how can you make your audience believe that that is the thing that their give a shit tank, their gas tank should be full on?
Wow, what a powerful way to end this episode. Rich, you are incredible. Thank you for coming on today. Look, if people want to learn more about the book, order the book, where can they go?
Probably the easiest, there's a nice little sampler on getrich.af/dragon. So you can go there and you can download the sample, and there's links to anywhere where you want to buy it. The audiobook version, the Kindle version, the print version. Just let me know. And from there, you can obviously, I'm very open. Like, there's my email address, my details, and you're welcome to connect. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, but all of that information is there.
Awesome. Rich, you are the man. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking about Here Be Dragons. And hey, look, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate it, like it, subscribe to it. And if you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources. Thank you so much for chiming in. I just wanted to take a second to thank our sponsor, Auxbus. Auxbus is the all-in-one suite of tools you need to run your podcast. And it's actually what we run here at Speakerflow for Technically Speaking. It makes planning podcasts simple. It makes recording podcasts simple. It even makes publishing podcasts to the masses simple. And quite honestly, Technically Speaking wouldn't be up as soon as it is without Auxbus. Thank you so much, Auxbus. And if you are interested in checking Auxbus out, whether you're starting a podcast or you have one currently, get our special offer, auxbus.com/speakerflow, or click the link below in our show notes.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.